Hi everybody, so I'm Louise from Greetham Gilbert. I'll probably know some faces here already. Just wanted to go through really, I guess, there's a lot of negativity at the moment, obviously around legislation and obviously other changes with the rent reform bill and various other things. So I just thought I'd recap on a couple of things that are coming up, and I'd also try and give some positivity, if possible, things to look out for, and maybe improvements and things that I think people should be looking at this year, just to prepare for the reform bill that's coming through. So be next slide. Thank you very much. So obviously, just to refresh, obviously, there's you can't kind of get away from in the press. There's so much stuff going on at the moment about the reform bill, and obviously all the damp and mold issues, Awaab's law, and obviously the changes with the proposed energy performance standards as well in 2030. So and obviously, I think a lot of people do know about the reform bill, but if not, just a real quick recap that they're looking to get rid of Section 21 notices. So the no-fault eviction will be no more, ending fixed-term tenancies. So every tenancy will be periodic. I get asked this quite a lot, actually. Well, what happens in my 12-month or 6-month tenancy? Well, there just won't be one. It will start as a rolling contract, a periodic contract. There'll be limits to obviously rent increases, which there is already in place through Section 13, but there won't be any Section 21s to then evict people to get them out to increase your rent. There won't be any rental bidding wars, so taking higher offers from people. And obviously there's various other things, as you can see, in place that will be brought in. There will be, and a positive, I would say, of this, there will actually be a national database, obviously local council involvement, so which will have a lot of information in there in terms of certification and things like that. So there is a positive with that. We don't know costs, but we've been told it's minimal. Obviously, the Awaab's law, which I know is going to be touching on in more detail after me, but obviously just to be aware that the damp and mold issues, there will be a much stricter time frame to to resolve issues and to address issues. So landlords really need to be, and agents need to be absolutely all over this. So that's again coming in. And then obviously we talked about earlier the energy efficiency standards as well, which we are again not currently in place, but looking to go up obviously by 2030. So again, to a C and above, it'll be illegal to rent a property if it's not a C and above. Currently it's set at an E. Again, we've got some great people in the group that can share and help us with these things, but to get to a C maybe not be possible. So what else will there be there to help in the future? So again, it's not a now thing, but just as an awareness that is definitely coming in. So what I actually had a look at is just to give you a bit of an overview in terms of the rental sector nationally. So obviously there's various companies out there, but Good Lord is actually one of the largest referencing agencies out there, and they actually run a report, and I just had a look at that report and just wanted to give you a bit of information in terms of the state of last year. Obviously you can't review this year yet, so really sort of gone and looked at, there's been various questions asked and opinions of landlords, tenants and agents. And I think overall the general consensus, and we can see this in the marketplace as well, being an agent, that there is a lot more property coming to market, a lot more investment properties landlords are selling, probably getting very concerned and worried about what's going to happen. I think it's something, obviously, everyone has their own strategies and situations, but I think it's good to be aware that, it might not all be bad, when things do change, and that making sure that you are as compliant as possible, that you are, as let ready as possible and that you're getting the best rents, and how to achieve that. Hopefully that will assist with obviously the reform bill. But what it did sort of point out, obviously, that there are people leaving the marketplace, and also just we've seen this as well in the press, that a lot of tenants now are spending over 40% of their gross income on rent. So I know that's a bit of a negative, but that is obviously just a fact of last year. So just a bit of information there for you. So I also had a look at tenants that are looking to buy properties. So again, it's just sort of the demand is there. There is a lot of demand for accommodation. Certainly we see that currently, lots of too many leads for the properties that we've got, and it is a big problem. But even in terms of home ownership, if you look at those percentages, you know, there's certainly a good portion of tenants that are still wanting to rent, that don't want to buy. So there really needs to be, and there has been obviously lots of information out there being passed back to government, you know, to try and you know, come to some sort of agreement and changes in the with the legislation. But because there is obviously there are people that just can't afford to buy or don't want to buy. And as I say, just wanted to pop some information in there for you, so you could see that. But as I say, we can't see the demand slowing down soon. If anything, we need more properties. So I guess really it's just about planning ahead, because this is going to come in, and a lot of people are seeing it in a very negative way, but property is still one of the best investments if you're investing in the right place and you are, you know, really looking after your property and thinking of it as a long-term investment. So we just need to jump ahead, sorry. Just the next slide, yeah. Brilliant, thank you. So again, I think if you've not read the bill, have a look. There's been obviously coverage in GB Landlords, but do read about it. As I say, really to plan ahead, to be as compliant as you possibly can be, to be as appealing as you can be, and just making sure that, you know, that you're aware of what's happening. But what this report also did demonstrate was it asked tenants what was most important to them when looking to rent. So again, if you're looking to invest or you're looking to buy or expanding, there's just a few things that tenants actually said were important to them. The first one being a parking space. So this is just something that if you are looking to buy property, particularly in this area, looking at areas where you can get a space for your tenant, that was actually seen as one of the most valuable things to a tenant in the report that was issued last year, sorry, at the end of the year. And also electric cars. So landlords, you know, there was a lot of information about wanting to install one of the electric plug-in charging points for electric vehicles. So again, that might be something to consider to make your property more attractive. Just have to go to the next slide, sorry. And after that, yeah, thank you. Pet-friendly properties. So again, not something that a landlord wants. Certainly, if I've been asked that for any of my properties, I always think, oh no, you know, you hear horror stories, but actually a lot more tenants have got pets, particularly since COVID, and certainly we've seen a huge increase of people wanting pets in their properties. So I think just again, maybe thinking about the flooring that you've got down, just trying to plan for that. It will be harder for you to potentially reject somebody with a pet in the future. So again, just trying to make your property as attractive as possible. Furnishing your property as well. I think, again, we see a lot of properties where we're based in the northeast. There is a huge variation in the standard of accommodation internally. So, you know, think about, again, longevity. Most tenants, I know, if they get a good quality property with good furniture, they do look after it. Appreciate that there will be exceptions to that rule. But again, just that longevity of investing in something that's going to last. And it also, it generally, it does look, it can look a lot nicer. There's also, refurbished companies that offer sort of, good furniture that's been reconditioned, or auctions, things like that. But again, just make sure that you've got all the correct labeling, because there are certain criteria for furniture that you have to have labeling in place. Again, one of the other sort of things that came out of the report is just, again, good quality internet being included in rent, and certainly things like smart features. So all these sort of new technologies that are coming out, not necessarily for obviously your short-term lets. I know people do have this already, but certainly for the AST market, these were all the things that were coming out that that they found really important to them. So again, making it attractive to prospective tenants, so your property really does stand out. And I think really just going back to the Renters' Rights Bill, obviously, again, we're just sort of just making sure that you understand what's involved in that. I think the landlord that's well educated and that really sort of keeps abreast of what's going on, and comes to groups like this and does their homework, will safeguard their business in the future, really. That's certainly our opinion. One thing I just wanted to mention briefly about, again, any sort of modernisations of properties and changes that are coming in with the new HMO regulations in April. One of the key changes is the mechanical extraction, so fans and things like that in kitchens and bathrooms. That will obviously be something that is part of the licence criteria for the additional licensing. I don't think it's in selective. I believe it's not part of that criteria, but certainly 3 and above, and it's already in mandatory HMOs as well. So just as awareness, if you are doing any works to your properties, upgrading them and making improvements, just take that on board, basically. And again, just some further sort of other points I wanted to mention that are probably very obvious, but I think are quite essential to review. Again, we've got landlords that just kind of let their property and don't really sort of necessarily think about the interior. There's a lot more we see online now that are definitely more styled, and colour schemes. It's not your sort of magnolia and your whites. They are actually a lot more design led. So have a look. There's loads of information online, loads of photographs, and really try and make your property stand out, especially if to get a good rent. Make it as attractive as possible. We tend to actually colour match little green and fire and ball colours. I've seen a lot of that, and a lot of our landlords do that now, but there are a lot that still don't. So definitely have a look at that. Attention to detail, so little things like door stops to stop just damage in the property. Safety cleats for pull cords are actually that you've got to have those legally now. So just again, it's looking after blinds, keeping things in good condition, replacing window, the blinds, the weights, the chains. Often we'll go into properties and things will just be damaged, or they just don't look as nice. Just those little things really do make a difference when you're trying to increase and get a good rent. Again, planning maintenance, so checking your property over, making sure you're doing inspections regularly, and that the work that you are planning that in. Again, the landlords that stay, and certainly the good quality properties will let, and tenants will more than likely stay there long term if they're in really good condition. In terms of the market rent as well, so it's really important this. I've got a number of landlords that have not increased their rent for a number of years. We've got a rent review actually with one of our clients currently that we've just taken on fairly recently, and they've not had a rent review in sort of 4 or 5 years. We've actually looked at market rents, and we've managed to increase quite significantly their rent. So obviously for return on investment, but obviously with the new legislation looming, you want to make sure that you've got your rents tenants to where they are. And there's loads of information online. Again, your agent can give you that information. They can run comparables. We've got access to Rightmove Plus, so we can look at what's rented. There's information there that you may not see. There's obviously other tools as well, other portals, but make sure that you're looking at that now. I'd say that's really important, because you may find that you're not getting as much rent as you could. I also think don't be greedy either. I think you want to be sort of making sure that you're just placing it correctly so that you are attracting the right tenant. And again, just sort of on the investment side, all the things, I guess, that are very obvious, but just look at your portfolio, but look at where you're investing, look at areas maybe where you've got improved transportation links. The metro is extending further into Northumberland. If you don't have any HMOs, you might want to consider looking into professional HMOs where it's not a joint and several tenancy, you're renting the room out with inclusive bills. I know there's a lot more people looking at doing this because in certain areas, it's a much better investment, especially doing sort of full renovation and really bringing those properties up to a good standard. But make sure that you're just doing your research and you're looking in the local area and you're looking at rents. Does it need a license? Because some areas, under a 5-bed still don't require a license. You'd still have to do it up to a licensed standard, I guess, but you don't have to then have that license. So, where are those areas? Again, your agent should be able to help you with that. One big thing as well that I often get asked about as well is referencing, and levels of referencing. So always do thorough referencing. I mean, certainly as an agent, we have to do our due diligence. We have to make sure that every guarantor in a property is thoroughly referenced, and professional lettings, again, tenants, making sure that they're suitable. We also just take the first tenant that comes along. And again, if you do this yourself, you may use other portals. You might not use an agent, but certainly if you do, you just want to make sure that you're getting the right tenant. So especially in our industry, it's very common practice to, who lets the property first, gets the let kind of thing. But we would always encourage a landlord to think about and make sure that they look at the person that's moving into their property. And I think with the reform bill coming in, even more so, that's so important. Find out what's their long-term their long-term objective. Are they looking to stay for 6 months, or maybe it might be a couple of years? So when you don't have that security of a fixed term tenancy, referencing and talking to that applicant and not just going with the first tenant that comes along, I think is really important. And the presentation of your property as well, maximizing it once you've done all this work and made it look really great and you've decorated it to get the best rent possible, and you want to present it to a good standard. And it was really interesting. I still, again, look online and see a number of properties that just aren't being marketed to a good standard, and getting maybe the sort of tenants that they should be getting. I have tried to not take any sort of local properties, so hopefully there's no one's properties on here. This is from Rightmove, so it would be agent photography generally, but this is just some of the stuff that I've seen quite recently in the last 24 hours, and these are properties that are actively for rent. So again, is your agent marketing the property to the best possible standard to get that best rent for you and to get the best tenant? I think we've got one which is obviously horizontal, so come to turn your head there to have a look, but you don't really get a good feel for what you're getting for your money. I know we always try and get in and get the photographs when the properties are empty where possible, or at least work with the tenants to make sure that they're clean and tidy. But you want to get a good wide angle lens ideally, or just a good shot of the property just to get that online and present it to its highest. And I've got a few examples of how they should be marketed. Obviously these properties are of a different standard. Some have been for sale, some are to let. but there is a mixture. But just to give you an idea of, just by dressing your property, just by taking it at the right angle. We do have an in-house photographer, a professional photographer, so we are quite lucky in that respect. And there are some agents out there that actually do hire them in and will have good quality photography. But that's just something, I think, just to think about when you're obviously, you know, talking to your agent. Make sure that your properties are being put on online to a good standard. There's a few different ones there. You can they are, but and yeah, I probably should have put more of a cross section. But even the properties that are, you know, I would say maybe beige, these are more styled. It's just to show you, obviously, what can be done. You can, you know, you don't want to zoom in on a table or zoom in a bath. You want to see, you know, what it actually is. So you can still make it look, you know, fairly decent online. I probably should have popped a few student ones in there, but even so, as I say, it's just making sure that the angles look great. And then lastly, just a couple of other things I wanted to mention, just a few updates really. Just obviously there have been changes in right to rent guidance, and they have, I actually don't have the exact information. I think it's the BRP cards that they've got rid of. And I think just to be aware that obviously with right to rent checks, tenants have to apply for a visa. I can provide more information on that another time if necessary. And also from the 14th of May, it used to be the rent that was anyone paying rent over it says here 8,300, that person would be required to have an AML check carried out. It's now actually, as from the 14th of May, that's everybody, doesn't matter about the rent. So that's tenants and guarantors and landlords. So again, as an agent, we will have to do this on landlords. We currently already do it and include this already for all of our tenants and guarantors. So there's no change for us because we do this anyway in all of our referencing, but not every agent does do that. So just to bear that in mind. And I think that's it. Oh no, I did, sorry, my last thing. Just because I thought this was quite funny, actually, the little cartoon at the end, sorry. I just thought it was quite funny. I popped it in. I was trying to end on a little bit of a laugh, really. But again, you know, as a landlord, what we do. So, but yeah, hope you found that quite funny. And that's it. That's me. But thank you for listening, and I hope you got some good information there.
Thank you very much, Louise. I love that cartoon. Yeah. One thing that people underestimate when you're a landlord is, I don't know if anyone else does this, show of hands, there's not really many on the screen, but every time it absolutely lashes down with rain, I always just presume in the morning I'm going to wake up with someone who's texted me about a leaky roof. And I don't think you have that same worry if you're a tenant, do you? You just say, well, if we get a leak, we ring the landlord and they'll have to fix it. But yeah, every time there's lashing rain, I don't know why, it always just wakes me up and keeps me that slightly little bit on edge. Louise, thanks very much. I think the questions that have been asked seem to have been answered in the chat, but the main one was, are there any templates to put rent up? So section 13, rent increase template.
Yeah, but what I would say, and what we found, so we actually had a landlord quite recently that, I mean, the rent did go up quite considerably for this particular gentleman. I can't say this would be the case for everyone, but jumped from I think it was 900 to 1200. That's still under market rent. He actually decided to not go to full market rent, but kept it lower. But you know, the way that we handle it is we'd meet the tenants face to face, or we'd speak to them on the phone. We wouldn't just send them a notice. So talk to your tenants and explain the situation, and you know, and give them the proof and show them the other properties that are potentially higher. Again, don't be greedy. You know, if you want these tenants to stay and they're good tenants, they look after your property. You know, we've had someone in for 10 years. We've increased it, but not to full market rent. So it's really just, you know, it depends on your situation. But a section 13 notice is a standard notice.
Buying a tenant with property with a tenant in situ, do you serve section 3 and 13 together?
Section
or
3 is
ordering legally matters given the 1 month notice? I don't know if you feel comfortable answering it. I don't know how. Don't know if that's
I mean,
a
I'm not
agent question or.
not a solicitor, but I mean, generally, if you're buying anyway, you would do your Section 3 and your Section 48 notice anyway. You can do a combined one. I just think be careful, obviously, because, you know, again, I'm not a solicitor, so I think you probably, maybe if anyone else is on the line that can answer that. But yeah, you've got to you know, issue your notices correctly. Certainly, Section 21 is still currently in place.
And last question from Ed: can I implement a rent increase via an agreement? I'm on good terms with all my tenants. What paperwork is involved?
Sorry, are we talking on an agreement verbally or on an email, or? I mean,
I don't know. Ed, do you want to jump on? No. We'll come back to Ed. Well, yeah, go on, Ed.
For a moment. Yeah, so I just meant, so, you know, if they're obviously okay with the increase and there's no qualms, which I don't think there would be, what do I need to do? Yeah, I guess paperwork wise to, you know.
Section 13. I mean, I can send you a copy of ours. I mean, it's honestly, it's very simple. You can download them. But a Section 13 notice is all you would, and you've got to give them notice. Some people will produce a new agreement, and you might want to do that. I know a lot of people think if they tie people in now for a fixed term, but the problem is we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we don't know when it's going to be implemented, the rent reform bill. 2025 is, you know, we're being told, and there is a lot, you know, that is going to happen this year, but I've actually heard recently other things, you know, in Wales things have taken longer. So I think nobody really knows. I think just go along your normal business at the moment, you know, look after your properties, do your inspections, get them up to scratch, you know, review all your rents, make sure that you've got, you know, good tenants paying the right rent. And I think that's really what you need to focus on. I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. We're going to move on. Louise was worried that she didn't have anything to say. Little miss using twice our allocated time. We're fine, don't worry. Matthew is going to jump on now and cover off something that, of course, is pretty important. So Matthew from Envirovent, can you jump on, please?
Hi, everyone. How are we doing? My camera keeps going off for some reason, Mark. I've got no idea why, mate, but it keeps dropping off every 5 seconds. That could be a bit of an issue here. It hides my ugly mug at least, so there's some benefits there for you guys. But yeah, I'll just keep popping it back on if I see it. But if I go blank, you can still hear me. That's the important thing. Right, so we're going to cover off very quickly who Envirovent are as a business. And then we're going to have a little look at the changes that are coming up very soon with these new government regulations. So Envirovent, we are one of the UK's leading manufacturers and installers of ventilation systems for homes in the UK, have been for the last 35 years or so. We have helped over 1 million homes solve damp, condensation and mold issues across the UK so far. And when I say ventilation, it's always worth just clarifying, all we mean by ventilation is the provision of fresh air to a room or a building. So it's nothing too complicated about ventilation at all. We'll take care of all the nitty gritty and the litres per seconds and the meters squareds. You guys just worry about, you know, staying at the right side of the regulations, I guess. So I'm going to share this screen now if I can. Hopefully this will stay on and it won't keep going off. Let's have a look. Go. And then we just want to open this file up for you. Okay, so as Louise has touched on so far, there are some changes that are coming on the back of that really tragic incident that happened in December 2020, where Awaab Ishaq died in London, I believe it was. Yeah, it was a really bad case of mold in the property, and unfortunately he lost his life to that particular issue. So on the back of that, the Conservative government launched an investigative inquiry. That's then led on to something called Awaab's Law, and that's being carried forward by the Labour government, which will be implemented very soon. It's already been kind of rolled out to social housing, and that's going to hit the private sector very soon. So really, we want to just have a chat today about what we can do to stay on the right side of that and get a little bit proactive, get ahead of the curve a little bit, and understand what's going to be changing a little bit more. So without further ado, I'll just start to chat through this, and then we'll see if we can get into a bit of detail beyond that. I'll keep this as short and sweet as I can for you. So why are we talking about this then? So the UK government has introduced new legal responsibilities for landlords regarding damp, mould and condensation within rental properties. So we'll just have a little chat about that and how the new laws will be enforced, what you need to do to stay compliant. Again, a little note from us, really proactive landlords will save money. Investing in education, ventilation and heating now prevents costly fines and legal action later. So in terms of what's changing, landlords will now bear full responsibility for prevention, really, in addressing the condensation and damp and mould issues. Local councils now have a little bit more power and a little bit more incentive, really, to kind of swing the axe a little bit here with things like £30,000 fines, banning orders, that kind of stuff. We're not going to get anywhere near that, guys. We're going to really stay on top of this stuff. It will only be really the very kind of unswitched on who fall victim to this stuff. I'm sure of it, but it's just there as a threat, really, at the moment. That's coming into play. Minimum ventilation standards and heating standards are now legally required, and tenant complaints must be taken seriously. And that's going to be one of the biggest changes, I think, in terms of how this actually interacts with us on a day-to-day basis. Legal action and fines. So I guess you've got to try and document a little bit of what you're doing to help out your tenants when they do raise a complaint. So document is my advice. Any conversations you have around condensation and mould, just document them. So the law before had landlords as a general duty to prevent a habitable home and a habitable space for your tenants. But often the argument was whose responsibility the condensation issues in the property were. Was it a lifestyle issue? Was it the property not being fully ventilated to an adequate standard? It was a bit of a back and forth and passing the buck, you know, and really a little bit subjective. The new laws are going to be different to that now, but enforcement was always inconsistent, and councils had limited powers, and many complaints went unresolved. Again, it is a social housing comparison as opposed to the private rental sector, but the issue with the Awaab Ishak problem was that the tenants themselves raised lots of concerns around the condensation and mould in the property, and unfortunately the housing association who rent the house out not only didn't take it seriously, but actively kind of told them it was their own fault, get on with it, that kind of thing. You're lucky to have a house over your head, you know, all that kind of stuff, which is obviously very, you know, it's not where we want to be. So this is taking things a lot more seriously now. The new law will be policed. There will be enforcement of mould and damp regulations coming in. They'll be stricter than they have been. The local powers to take action against landlords who fail to comply. So we'll have a look at how that works in a second. But what this means for you guys is ignoring these new laws is no longer an option. Local councils are being much more proactive in policing damp and condensation and mould issues. So taking those proactive steps now will protect your investment, keep tenants safe and ensure compliance with the law. And that's the biggie. Minimum ventilation and heating standards are now legally required, and tenants must be taken seriously in terms of your conduct with their complaints. So just moving down to how this law will look when it rolls out and what's going to change. So how will the local authority know there's a damp and mould issue? So the obvious thing is the tenant is going to complain. So tenants can report damp, mould, condensation issues straight to the council now, or environmental health departments. And under the new rules, tenants no longer have to prove the mould is caused by the property, as in lack of ventilation. The burden is now on you as landlords to show that you've taken the steps to prevent and rectify and educate. There is also going to be routine property inspections by local authorities. How they're going to quite manage that from a staffing point of view, I don't really know at this point, but that's what's being bandied around. The councils will proactively investigate rental properties in high-risk areas. So by that we mean older housing stocks, high-density rentals, HMOs, that kind of thing. You know, these streets that we've seen on the group chat today, where you know students are taking over certain streets, and there's very little private residences left over there. They'll be targeted, no doubt. So landlords may be required to provide evidence that they have met ventilation, heating and maintenance standards, and also the council powers to inspect and enforce the housing health and safety system, which really doesn't roll off the tongue very well, but there you go, not very catchy. The inspections will be used to assess damp and mould hazards. They'll be rated as a category 1 or category 2, category 1 being the most important and most urgent. Enforcement officers can then see issues for improvement and in-issue notices if properties are found to have excessive damp and mould risks. Severe breaches may lead to emergency remedial action where the council arranges for repairs and then bills the landlord. I'm sure you'll all agree you don't want that to happen because the council won't be quite as discerning as you guys as who does the work and how it's done and what kind of costs are involved. But as I said, there are also banning orders, potential banning orders, £30,000 fines, and just improvement notices rolled out as well. So the key responsibilities for landlords at this point, ventilation standards. So every rental property must have openable windows in all rooms, except in internal bathrooms, obviously, where you can't have an external wall there for a window. In that case, they require extraction fans. As Louise has already touched upon, there are going to be certain responsibilities putting us more in line with the Scottish housing market around things like extraction fans for kitchens, bathrooms, and possibly down the line WCs as well. But we'll see what happens with that one. Extractor fans in kitchens and bathrooms must be operational and cannot be disabled by the tenant, i.e. they've got an isolator switch that will be high up on the wall and not easily turned on and off. The heating standards is an important one because heating and condensation and mould goes hand in hand. Homes must meet the minimum heating standards to prevent condensation. The non-switchable radiator valves should be installed in kitchens and bathrooms to prevent tenants from turning them off. So again, we're taking the human element away here, the kind of the on and offs and all of the fiddling with dials, and making it a really stripped back approach. So if the heating's on, it's in those important areas. The tenant education and reporting of issues is another important factor. Landlords must inform tenants on preventing condensation and provide clear reporting procedures. And regular inspections are now expected to catch issues early. So do include condensation, mould and damp as part of your home inspections. Really have a good look for it. If you need any advice or guidance on that kind of stuff during your inspections, please give me a call. One thing about us at Envirovent is advice and guidance is always free of charge. We're always very happy to help. We do care deeply and passionately about tenants, about domestic homeowners, but also you landlords. In terms of this piece about educating your tenants as well, we have got a gift for you guys today, which we'll provide after the call. I'll take email addresses from you guys and send this out by email, but we have got a document that we can have a look at, which is 13 ways to reduce condensation issues, and it's designed to be given to your tenants directly. So that will go some way to cover off the condensation piece that you guys have to top off. I'll give you a very quick look at that at the moment, just to give you a very quick look at that so you know what to expect. But this will be provided by Envirovent for you guys to roll out as a preventative measure before things like mechanical systems that we can provide for you are required. Start with the basics. So this document you can see on your screen now, hopefully. This will be your 13 quick and easy wins against condensation and mould. So things like, avoiding drying clothes on radiators where possible. I must stress that's where possible. Keeping the kitchen door closed when cooking, lids on pans when cooking, closing the bathroom door when showering, wiping down wet surfaces if they do get a bit moist, using a bath mat, which sounds really silly, but it's a really important one because water sitting on the floor will evaporate into the air much more easily and cause condensation and then mould. Keeping the heating on low and steady, so we don't need loads and loads and loads of heat in these premises, but where it's beyond comfortable or affordable. But just really bear in mind that sudden temperature drop will equate to higher humidity, which means more condensation and a bigger threat of mold growth. Give your wardrobe some space. So again, we see a lot of complaints from tenants where they've got the wardrobe absolutely crammed full of clothing. Any moist air that is trapped in that space then cannot move around, and it will then stagnate and cause spores to develop and mold to grow. So a little bit more room in those wardrobes goes a long way. Move your bed and furniture away from colder walls. Open your windows when you can, and I'll come back to that in a quick second. If you've got an extractor fan, leave the isolator switch turned on. We see it all too often where tenants are knocking off the isolation switch because it makes a bit of a noise. And there are different levels of fans out there, and Envirovent specialize in this stuff, and we provide silent fans and humidity controlled fans that will work for themselves without kind of any human interaction with that. But your general rule of thumb is your extraction fan should be available and should be used by the tenant. Don't pile too much stuff in one room so there's no airflow. Don't dry wet clothes on the radiator, and use a cloth to wipe down any condensation that you see around those areas. So these are just things we can give out to tenants. It's got our name on the bottom there, so it comes from us as an independent kind of expert in the field, as opposed to you guys giving it the finger wag. but that should hopefully be a really good, guideline for your education piece and keeps you on the right side of that legislation. So there are some bits and bobs around condensation and mold to factor in there, certainly, but we're here to help with that. So just to go back to the guidance booklet. When it opens. I need some of that broadband you promised us, Louisa. There we go. Right, so just to go back to the bottom of that document for you guys, there are also a checklist attached to this document as well for you around your kind of inspections and whatnot. So some things to have a little look at here. And again, we can provide this stuff to you if you need it. Just give us a shout. I'll take some details from you guys at the end. One thing to really kind of look at here is how the law will be policed. So the tenant escalates the issue. If the landlord fails to act within a reasonable time frame, the tenant can report it to their local council or EHOs. The council inspection is then carried out, and that is part of the Housing Health and Safety Rating Scheme to determine if which category it's going to be falling under. Category 1, which is severe mold and damp, and Category 2 is things that are less urgent and less significant, but still may be considered actionable by the council. And then number 3 in the list there is enforcement action against the landlord happens next. So if the issue is not resolved, landlords face improvement notices, fines of 30k and above, banning orders and emergency remedial action, as we've discussed already. So tenants are protected from eviction, by the way, for reporting damp and mold issues under the retaliatory eviction ban. I do have a client at the moment that I'm working with who did tell me she was going to, rather than investing in the property and getting the ventilation right, she was going to issue a Section 21 and kick the tenant out because they complained about the mold in the property. So that was an interesting conversation to try and educate the landlord there on, you can't do that kind of thing. You're going to get yourself in very hot water. Not only that, but you do have a bit of a moral responsibility to ensure that the house is well ventilated. So don't go and do that kind of mistake if you can help it. So yeah, in terms of that stuff, that's what we'll leave that at for now. And just to give you guys a really quick run through of condensation as an issue in the UK, 1 in 5 homes in Britain suffer from the effects of condensation. That, by my maths, we've got 5.5 million rental properties in the UK in private rental sector. So that's 1.1 million homes potentially being affected at the moment with condensation and mold. This is a ventilation problem. It's not a structural issue. Typically, it's by far and away the biggest cause of mold is condensation. Warm, moist air meeting a colder surface, leading to vapor becoming water droplets on the surface of that window or external wall or wherever it may be. That will leave a thin layer of condensation. In poorly ventilated homes, that will, with elevated humidity, that will feed that clean water into a mold, and that will develop very quickly. The threshold for mold growth is typically 80% humidity for more than 6 hours or more, and we'd expect to see mold growing from there. So that typically means the house isn't ventilated enough, as in we haven't got a provision of cleaner, fresher air into the property on a regular basis, creating air changes. So it means that the moist air is able to build and build and build to those higher levels where that mold can take place. So ventilation is really, really important, and it's not an issue that's going to go away very quickly, I don't think, guys. So definitely worth being proactive on. We specialize in all things ventilation, as you'll be aware. One of the most sought after solutions for this problem, what we do most of for this issue, especially for landlords in rental properties, we use positive input systems, PIV systems that we hand build in Yorkshire, and they will provide a background trickle of cleaner, drier air into the property, and that will lower that humidity down from that 80% troublemaker down to that kind of 45 to 55% natural normal zone where we want to be. So that's going to, by means of kind of dilution and replacement of the air content in the home, those cyclical air changes will then occur and humidity will be kept down lower. And at that level, you cannot get mold growth. It's impossible. These systems that we're talking about as well, they are EPC rating neutral. So to go back to Louisa's point earlier, there will be some significant pressure coming onto the landlord market around EPC and energy ratings of houses. These devices will not affect that one way or the other, so you won't be having a decrease in that at the expense of ventilation. We do know that temporary fixes don't work, and again, I know I'm talking to the right crowd here when I say this. Temporary fixes like dehumidifiers, they'll take care of one room at a time. They're energy zappers that cost a lot of money to run. Windows being left open for long periods of time will let cold air in winter months. Every 1 degree Celsius we drop the air temperature down, we get a 5% rise in internal humidity. So as soon as the windows are closed again, that moisture clings to those cold surfaces, and then that mold will come back with a vengeance because the humidity is higher and will grow that into mold faster. And of course, painting and decorating as a solution to mold is only a very short-term fix, and it will always grow back through there, and that's a given. So that's really a very quick nutshell, really, of what we do and how we do it.